Well, thank you so very much, sir.
Thank you. This is Focus Talk with Dennis Knight on 89.3 WKKC.
You're in tune Chicago's most popular college music radio station. 89.3 is WKKC. This is Focus Talk, the thought-provoking, solution-oriented talk show daring to make a difference in our communities. We're talking on a regular basis because the answers really matter. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about politics, religion, personal development, education, history, music, and then from time to time, we are spotlighting positive people who are doing positive things right here in the Inglewood community, throughout the Chicagoland area, as well as the entire continental United States. I'm your host, Dennis Knight. Joining me in the studio today is Mr. Terry Hardy. How are you, sir?
Hey, Dennis, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so very much for being here in the studio, being our special guest. Give us some information about who you are and what you do.
Well, first of all, Dennis, thank you for having me. I am the founder of World of Soul Motorcycle Community.
Okay.
And what that is a network of motorcyclists and clubs around the country, in fact, some in other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And what I do is I simply encourage the motorcycle community to seek alternative means for ways to give back to the community, namely young people that look like us.
Okay.
And helping with their pursuit of a post-secondary education. So what we're seeking to do at this point in time is not only that, but also to add value to their unique riding experience through World of Soul Motorcyclist Association. So what we're doing is we're taking those folks off of the network and transitioning them into a national motorcyclist association. Mm-hmm. And in order to make that happen, we're building out infrastructure through bringing together the diversity of motorcycling. In the motorcycle community, there are 12 different types of motorcycle clubs. So we bring together one person from each of the 12 different types of motorcycle clubs and create a local team. And that team is called Riders United to Serve Humanity.
So now give me some information. First of all, how did all of this come about? So there was just a bunch of guys who like to ride and say, well, hey, let's do a little more. Or how did it work?
It all began when I was in a motorcycle club, and at that time, there was an opportunity to promote the club. So I started a social network, and it was called BrothersOfSoulMC.com. And eventually, it was transitioned over into WorldOfSoulMC.com once I left the club. So at that moment, it was an opportunity to really take things to another level. When you're talking to so many motorcyclists around the country, what do you say to them? Where do you lead them? So my work is always centered around social and cultural reconciliation. I'm a big fan of Dr. King, and we had an opportunity to raise some money for Dr. King's memorial when it was scheduled to be built, raise $100,000.
Oh, wow.
Yes, indeed. And on the grounds where Dr. King's memorial was scheduled to be built, we announced we turned those funds over to the King Memorial Foundation and announced our next project called Bikers for Obama. And after that, we culminated that campaign to encourage folks to register to vote and cast a vote on Election Day into a ride event called Ride for Change, Ride for Hope. So the momentum kept moving forward as it relates to civic education, taking us from where we are to where we ought to be, that movement that Dr. King and others came together on, that broad-based coalition of support. So what we're doing today is no different than what they did back then, bringing together the diversity of the community to make some improvements in how we transform our communities from where it is to where it ought to be. One of the last books that Dr. King wrote before he passed was, I believe, Where Do We Go From Here? From Chaos to Community.
Okay.
So how do we make that transition? The motorcycle community has its challenges, and we are trying to be creative and innovative in ways to overcome those challenges and add value to their unique riding experience. So that's why we're bringing forward World of Soul Motorcyclists Association and Riders United to Serve Humanity as a means to get that done. Because with the association, there's rider recognition, added value and support for a group of motorcyclists that is new to motorcycling when it comes down to it. In relations to the dominant culture, African Americans are still pretty much a new presence in the motorcycle community. So now that we've surfaced in the manner in which we have, it's an opportunity to leverage that existence into something more meaningful and more powerful as it relates to what we have the ability to do when we come together.
So cyclists with a cause.
Yes, in more ways than one. You know, bikers give back to so many different types of causes, whether it's cancer, whether it's backpacks for kids, homeless people, you name it. Every cause
a lot of different things. Yeah.
Absolutely. But who gives back to motorcyclists? Okay, so that's where we come in at. We're here to elevate our presence in the motorcycle community with the industry by having negotiated cash savings at the register, premium items that we select on an annual basis, unique events that cater to our unique needs as minorities in the community, but are all-encompassing as it relates to the diversity of motorcycling. So even though we get started in the African American experience, it's not limited to African Americans, period.
Okay. So now you mentioned some of the challenges that cyclists may experience, and then on the other side, that you have people who only relate cycling to a negative connotation, and so my take is, well, what are you doing to change that image? Because sometimes you may say, well, that's not something that I really want to do, but they really don't know who you are and what you do, that you are doing positive things, but the negative image is what sticks out.
And that's been one of our biggest challenges, because it's really about pressure when it comes down to it, positive and negative peer pressure. Mm-hmm. And negative peer pressure seems to dominate the landscape. And because of that, we do have challenges at times moving forward a positive agenda in a negative environment. So what can we do? We have to be persistent with what we do. And that's why it's no different than panning for gold. You got to move a lot of dirt before you get to the nuggets. And so when we get to those nuggets, we find that we are connected with 12 people from each of the different types of motorcycle clubs that can relate to our vision and our mission. And then they become the conveyors of our products, programs, services, and events in that community to move forward our agenda in that community. People like to buy from people that they know and trust.
Now, that's another thing as far as the different types. I didn't know that there were different types of clubs.
Absolutely. Clubs and organizations, from bikers' rights organizations like ABATE. You've got Masonic clubs. You've got all-female riders clubs. You've got veterans riding groups. You've got traditional MC clubs. Mm-hmm. You've got independent riders. You've got manufacturer-specific riding groups, and so many more. 12 total.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it was that many. So now, is it possible that there are more outside of that 12 that haven't been defined, or that's it? I
think that's a good question, because there are. Okay. But they're really subcategories of that 12.
Okay, I see. Now, who or what puts together the data for that, so that you can even define the different types of categories, or even know that there are 12?
Well, that's pretty much cultural. Right? If you're in the culture, because you run across the different types of motorcyclists every day. It's no different than riding across the street. You got Cadillac drivers, you got BMW and Mercedes-Benz. They're all in their separate category. You recognize them when you see them.
Okay. All right. Now, are there already groups that are doing what you're doing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. But let me change that to the extent that everyone wants unity. Everyone wants peace. Motorcycling is about adventure, excitement, freedom, fun. So everybody wants that. Everybody wants unity. But how that comes about, there's always a problem with that, because there are the different factions in the community. If you're in with one club, sometimes you're out with another because of that. Clubs are somewhat divisive by nature, because they compete for everything under the sun. Attendance at events, the amount of members that they have, alignment with certain charities and sponsors, those types of things. And it doesn't really create an environment that brings people together. Sometimes it tears them apart. So it's a challenging environment, but really no different than the community as a whole. But because it's motorcycling, it somewhat stands out more.
Okay. And so I'm assuming, just like with anything, you have those particular issues and that you have to overcome those particular issues and let people know that we're doing something a little bigger.
Absolutely.
Just the vision.
Absolutely. And it's huge. I am humbled by the opportunity to serve the motorcycle community in the manner and with the vision that has been given me. Mm-hmm. And it hasn't been easy. But I tell you, the vision is so expansive that it seems like it never ends as far as the types of initiatives that can spring from it, that takes us from a ragtag or negative perception from the public to something that's very admirable. You take, for example, the education initiative that we brought forward to aid young people with their pursuit of a post-secondary education, and that being in collaboration with the community at large. Not many people would think that it would be possible for a motorcycle organization to sponsor college tours and fairs and produce scholarships. But scholarships have been done for decades, have been given for decades from motorcycle clubs, but the community at large is not very aware of the magnitude in which the motorcycle community gives back. And I think with what we're looking forward to with this motorcade of tour buses en route to historically black colleges and universities, it's going to raise a lot of heads, a lot of eyes, and the mindset of the community as a whole, and hopefully attract some resources to really increase the impact that motorcyclists can have in communities in which they live and serve.
Okay. All right. What do you see for the organization now, and what do you see for the organization, let's say 5 years from now?
I see an increase in membership with World of Soul Motorcyclists Association, and specific ones who are drawn to the opportunity becoming engaged with Riders United to Serve Humanity. So my thoughts are that there will be a major increase in the amount of cities that are represented by those local teams, and they will take on the programs of World of Soul Motorcycle Community and move forward a unified approach throughout this country. Mm-hmm. I see the manufacturers supporting that.
Okay. What about the young people? Now, how do you target the younger people, and then what do you say to them as far as moving forward, or in cycling, or just spreading the word of who you are and what you do?
Working inside of Chicago Public Schools has afforded me an opportunity to have some one-on-one conversations and some group discussions with young people. Mm-hmm. And it's really more so about listening than it is about talking. And it's about reconciling with them. And sometimes it's about apologizing to them for the images that have been cast upon society that have put them in a vulnerable position as it relates to what they think is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
Okay.
I think that by doing so, we're going to be able to attract, and I'm not the only one that's doing it, a lot of folks are doing that around the country. But me personally, I see the ability for us to bring some programs that are going to impact young people in partnership with manufacturers locally.
Okay.
And matter of fact, we've even located a parcel of land and are in negotiation with the city of Chicago to acquire that land so that we can make it possible for young people to learn how to ride motorcycles as an incentive for good grades and change of behavior. So it's a serious proposition. And like I say, I'm very humbled to just have a conversation about it and to put some steps in motion to make these things happen.
Terry, as a Chicagoan, there's no way possible that you can be and not have felt or even experienced at one point or another, either if it is personally or remotely, the violence aspect that goes on in the city. And so now, as a community leader, as an individual who has an organization that is dedicated to change, how do you see that your organization could be a positive effect in what's going on in Chicago as far as the violence is concerned? What can be done from your point of view?
I really think that's we can't change the world. The best thing that we can do is change us. And by doing so, I always like to say, allow the Spirit to move you, to improve you, and therefore, and as a result of that, those around you. I'll tell you personally, something did happen to me. In 2008, we had raised funds for Dr. King's Memorial, as I mentioned earlier, and we had brought forward Bikers for Obama, then Ride for Change, Ride for Hope. And I had just started riding a motorcycle about 3 years prior to that.
Right.
These things that I'm about to tell you, these things are in my book. And the reward that I got from that was 6 stitches to the head by an outlaw motorcycle club. And I became ostracized in the city of Chicago by those clubs that were subordinate to that outlaw club. So when you mentioned earlier we were talking about peer pressure, these are the types of things that we're dealing with in the motorcycle community. But my answer to that was not to retaliate eye for eye, but actually to deliver an example that would demonstrate love on my part for who I am, where I come from, and where I'm trying to go. And Ride for Change, Ride for Hope was the vehicle for which I was relaying my message to the community and engaging the motorcycle community. So we partnered with the King family in Atlanta. In 2009, in fact, Focus Talk was instrumental in that, I do believe, in promoting that. In fact, one of my alumni who worked with you produced the promo, and we appreciate that in thinking back. But yeah, folks that know me and have followed me in the motorcycle community know that my passion comes from experience. And what I like to see in the community is what I'm doing in the community and what I've experienced. And so seeking alternative means to conflict resolution, it takes a personal commitment. It takes a conversation. And I think that's the conversation that we really should be moving forward in the community, how to respond to those types of situations and being responsible for when the buck stops. Okay. And with World of Soul motorcycle community, as far as the example, the buck stops right here.
Okay. Terry, unfortunately, we've run out of time for this particular segment, but how can we get in contact with you? www.worldofsoulmc.com is our social network, and you can always reach out to me personally at 773-220-2602. That's my cell phone number. I'm available 24 hours a day. Okay. All right. Terry Hardy, thank you so very much for coming by. Please know that the door here at Focus Talk is always open. You don't have to knock. Just come on through.
I appreciate that, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
This is Focus Talk with Dennis Knight on 89.3 WKKC. Ladies and gentlemen, from the heart of Inglewood, Chicago's most popular college music radio station, 4 years in a row. This is 89.3 WKKC FM and HD1. Chicago, Chicago, Chicago.